All right, welcome back to another episode of Blown Coverage. This is week 11, and we have more big games this week. Last week, it was your team in the spotlight. Now it's back to my team, somewhat in the spotlight. Texas with the bye week, A&M against Missouri. But we've got a lot to get to. Before we even get to the games, I just want to point out while we're on the air talking, we may get our first playoff committee rankings. Those are going on right now. So maybe at the end of this, we'll have those, maybe not, but I am curious to see what those are going to look like. Is there anything, putting you on the spot here, because we didn't talk about this before, but is there anything you may be looking for in those rankings that maybe will be different than the AP poll, or just any thoughts on that in general?
Um, well, I'll be curious to see where they put Texas because Texas is right there on the cusp, right? I mean, they're 13, but maybe I'd be a little curious to see what they do with Alabama because I believe they're four, right? I would be curious, not being biased either. I would almost be curious to see if they would bump you guys just because the gauntlet of a schedule. And I mean, you could probably argue that for everyone else ahead of them, frankly. I think Alabama's had a harder schedule. I know they have that one loss against Florida State, which really sucks. And maybe that's why they don't. You guys are undefeated. I don't know.
I would be surprised, honestly, if they do that. I think they'll keep Ohio State, Indiana, A&M just because they're undefeated. I think that'll be
Yeah,
one three.
yeah. For some odd reason, I completely forgot when I started talking that Alabama had that loss, but they've been really impressive. No, I don't. I mean, I don't necessarily think that there'd be anything different.
I'm curious, just while you're maybe getting your thoughts together. I agree with you. I'm curious to see where they put Texas, and I just don't want them to have Texas too high because I can see what is already being set up, and that is a three-loss Texas getting into the playoffs. And look, we'll have to see how it happens. But here's the deal: I think this is actually a big deal because if they put Texas at like 11 or even 12,
Yeah,
and then let's just say they lose to Georgia. No, yeah. Let's say they lose to Georgia. Well, they're losing to the number 5 team in the country, so they're not going to fall back that much.
yeah.
And then they have Arkansas. They beat Arkansas, and then other teams are going to lose. So then Texas is right back there and on that cusp. And for A&M, it's like maybe they're inside the top 10. So now if they lose to A&M, are they still in the top 12? Like obviously, if they're in four, they're not going to get in. But to me, right now, a three-loss Texas should not be in the playoffs. I'd have to see who they're against, but I
Yeah,
just want to see why they have.
the only reason why I would agree with you is just because of the Florida loss. Well, I mean, you could almost argue like any like three loss SEC team. However, I think just like every year, there everybody can debate on who's that 11th and 12th spot, and it's like really sometimes, like last year, for instance, like the Boise State, like because they won the Mountain West, they went in and lost basically when maybe another team, like I think it was South Carolina, was a team getting a huge amount of buzz. So anyway, for the most part, I agree with that statement. However, something that would piss me off is just like some little crappy school getting in. So anyway,
Yeah, we'll see. I guess last thing on this, and this is the game we're going to get to. I'm curious to see where they're going to rank BYU and Texas Tech because
yeah,
it's going to be very important to see those teams and some of these ACC teams. Because if any of these teams are kind of ranked too highly, then it's like, well, a loss is only going to move you so far back. And these Big 12 teams, ACC teams, in my opinion, shouldn't be looked at the same way as the Big 10, SEC. And I just don't want them to set themselves up down the road where they have to make a tougher decision than they actually should be making at the end of the season.
right, because they're almost kind of at that. I wouldn't say the cusp, but like they're kind of near it, being 8 and 9 right now, and the coaches in the AP poll.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that'll be.
especially like Tech, I'd almost be curious, like if they'd be able to make it back in, just because they already got that one loss. So maybe I think BYU has a little bit more room just because they're undefeated so far. But anyway,
Yeah. Well,
which
let's get right
also
into
makes
that
it a
game then.
Saturday. Makes this
Yeah, well,
game, yeah.
let's get into it. It's Texas Tech minus 10. They're at home, 11 a.m. on ABC. This is where game day is going to be. I don't remember the last time game day was at Texas Tech in Lubbock. So it's going to be good to see. It's a good opportunity for, I think, the public to watch both these teams in full. I think a lot of the public has seen bits and pieces of both teams, but really Texas Tech, their big win on the season is Utah, and Utah's a
Mhm.
good team. People saw Texas Tech in that game. BYU, I think people have seen snippets of, and this is just a good opportunity to watch them both. What are your thoughts on this game?
So I think it'll be interesting just because what we just talked about with the playoff committee coming out with those rankings, just seeing where those two are at. So it's the two top teams in the Big 12 playing in Lubbock, which can be a really crazy place. And yes, I would know this because we had to play them every other year there, and the crazy tortilla throwers are insane. So for big games, they show up and it can get loud and emotional for sure. So, like you said, the best win for Tech is the Utah game, and give credit to them because that was with their backup quarterback too. Their sole loss is to Arizona State. Okay. BYU's best win is against Utah. And I'd like to kind of point out there that BYU Utah was pretty close. I believe it was 25-22, whereas Tech blew them out 34-10. So for me, in trying, not trying to be biased or anything like that, but both teams, are they legitimate? Because who have they played? Not horrible teams, but I don't think like they're elite teams either. Or I think they would maybe Tech would be kind of be able to be kind of near the top of the SEC or the Big Ten per se. But I don't know. I kind of question some of the competition, to be honest with you. Um, so I think the matchup for this game is going to be BYU's passing attack, which is 85th in the nation against Tech's 37th ranked passing defense. I don't think BYU is going to be able to run it against Tech's defensive line just because they're one of the best in the nation at run defense. And that's honestly what BYU likes to do. They like to run the ball and lean on that and not necessarily make their freshman quarterback have to throw it. However, his last game, he threw for 307 yards and two touchdowns, no interceptions. So I think that's his best game of the year. So he's got some momentum there. They're going to have to be basically no turnovers for either side to win this game, I think. And they both have great turnover margins. I think it's like plus 10 or something like that. I can't remember. But anyway, it'll be interesting. Like I said, I think it will come down to if BYU's quarterback is able to pass the ball to be able to set up the run in this game. And if they can maybe compete with Texas Tech. Otherwise, I think Tech's got this one.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what you said. Bear Bachmeyer is the BYU quarterback, and he's a freshman. He's been really good, really
Yeah.
impressive. And I've been
He was a
waiting
true freshman. Yeah.
every week I've kind of been waiting for this BYU team to fall. BYU kind of feels like destiny. Like they just don't lose. Like they've had games where they could have lost. They've been down multiple scores. They've been able to play from behind and win. Now, Texas Tech has been dominant. Their one loss, you just have to say, it was without their quarterback, and their quarterback is healthy now, Morton. And the other thing would be I agree with you on how well is BYU going to be able to pass the ball. But if they can run the ball, I wouldn't expect them to because that
Yeah.
Tech defense, it's number one in the nation, as I think you mentioned, in rush defense. But if they are able to run the ball, that's how they could win this game if they
Oh,
can
for sure.
control the clock.
For
That's
sure.
really key for them. Bogmar has been very efficient. 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Has he faced a team like Tech yet? No. But look, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's shown that he can be a pretty good game manager, and maybe that's all you'll need.
Especially
So
from a freshman. I think it's pretty good.
agreed, agreed. So they both had the common opponent against Utah. I agree that that game was closer. Although I will say that was a rivalry game,
Yeah.
so it's a little bit different. But It's interesting how many points. It kind of reminds me actually of the Texas Vanderbilt game because Vandy, good team, they're ranked high against Texas, but it's a
Yeah.
very good matchup for Texas specifically. And that's kind of how I feel about this game for BYU and Tech. And this is maybe just a good matchup for Tech in that they're very good at containing the one thing that BYU does well, and that is running the ball.
Yep. And
So,
Tech's offense is fairly like pretty well balanced, to be honest.
right, right. So if Tech can just get out to a lead here quickly, we'll see if these guys, Bachmeyer, can play from behind. That would kind of be my thing.
Hmm.
And I think you just have to lean Tech here. I do have to say 10 is a lot of points. Like at this
It
point,
is.
with the way BYU's been playing, I don't know if I can see them getting blown out. Like
Yeah.
they're just so competitive. They just play so hard versus everyone they play.
Who
But
did Cincinnati play last weekend? I forgot off the top of my
Utah,
head. That's right. Okay, so you and trying to think because you were saying that it feels like the Vandy Texas game. I think
mhm.
last week, since Cincinnati was 7, Utah was I don't know, so 18, 20 somewhere in there, but Utah was uh, picked beat them by 10 points, which they beat them by more. But anyway, so another similar game to that.
Agreed, agreed. I think BYU is probably a little better than Cincinnati, though. I
Oh
will
yeah,
say that.
yeah. I'm just saying as far as like the point, like the
Yeah,
spread.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I'll say this: if BYU can find a way to win this game, then you got to start talking about them the way you're talking about any other top 10 team. Like they're at this point, like the favorite
Oh
for the
yeah.
Big 12, and even I would say that honestly about either team because this is kind of either team's last major test within the conference as far
Yeah.
as regular season play, and they're probably going to face each other again.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for it. That's kind of all I have to say. I'm excited to watch both these teams in full. Is there anything else you wanted to say on the game, or do you want to move on?
Well, I wish it were at night, just because I do think there's something to say about playing in Lubbock at night. It is pretty crazy, but it is what it is, I guess. Playing at 11, but
They
nothing
can't
else.
all be at night, but
I know.
I will say this week there's an absence of really good night games. There's some big teams, but not necessarily like competitive games or games you would expect to be competitive. So, but that's not the way they necessarily make the night games. Is who's going to be the most competitive? Not necessarily, but let's move on to what could be a very competitive game, and it is number 3 Texas A&M versus 19 Missouri. This game's at 2:30 on ABC. A&M is favored by 5.5, and being that this is my team, and by the way, that lines up to 6.5 now. But being that this is my team, I'll kind of start out with the analysis, I guess. And I don't know what to think about this game from the Missouri angle, just because they're playing their backup quarterback, and we haven't really seen him yet, other
Right.
than 2 quarters of football. And I remember mentioning it in the post-game show. He looked pretty good passing the ball, but that's just in one half. We still have much to judge. That could be actually in favor of Missouri. It is in college not like the NFL
Hmm.
when there's a backup quarterback, there's a major drop off. In college, it's oftentimes not the same thing. So keep that in mind. I mean, Bo Prabula had been good, and he had been good, but he could be mistake prone, I think. But good enough to keep Missouri in all their games. So both teams are off a bye here. By the way, must win game for Missouri pretty much. They lose this game, they're probably out of it. They're going to have 3 losses. A&M has kind of got unlucky in the sense that they keep having to face teams with their backs against the wall. Like literally starting out with the Notre Dame game early in the season. Notre Dame had to win that game. Like just go down their schedule. Like every game's been like that. Maybe that's helping them be more battle tested, but we got Texas at the end of the year, and I think no matter if Texas loses to Georgia or if they beat Georgia, Texas is probably still going to be in a position to say, "Hey, if we win this game, we have a shot to be in the playoff." So that's going to be a must-win game for Texas. So A&M just kind of keeps having to face opponents maybe at their best. Also for A&M, this is their final little leg of a long road stand after going to Arkansas, to LSU, bye week, and then now to Missouri. Of those teams I just mentioned, you could argue Missouri is maybe the best overall team that they've faced in the SEC on the road to this point. And their defense is legit. And that's what I'm going to say. Now, I don't think they faced a team like A&M's offense in terms of depth of weapons, but I'm not sure A&M's faced a defense like Missouri, and it's going to be on the road, and Missouri is very good at defending the run. So could they force A&M to be a little bit one-dimensional, force Marcel Reed to make some mistakes? Would not shock me. Now, on the other side of the ball, A&M is kind of sneaky. I don't want to say bad, but they can give up run plays. They kind of have a little bit of a weakness there of giving up some runs. And the one thing I'll say is if their new quarterback, you may know his name, I don't know his name actually, but if Missouri's quarterback if he's struggling to pass the ball, then A&M I think will be fine because they can force Missouri to be one dimensional and they can like load the box. But if he's passing the ball well, then I think A&M could actually have a tough time defending Missouri's offense. It's not a team that's going to put up 40. At least I don't think they are. But this could be a much closer game than people are thinking. Missouri is also very good at controlling the clock. They have everything to play for. They win this game. I mean, they may go all the way up to the top 10, for sure the top 12, and they're in the playoff conversation. I don't know if you have it in front of you, but what's the rest of Missouri's schedule? They, I think it's pretty manageable. I think they have some games they could lose, but
They,
they have at
yeah,
Oklahoma.
yeah,
But
at
that's
Oklahoma and Arkansas, Mississippi
losable,
State too.
but
Yeah,
winnable. Yeah.
yeah.
So I think after A&M beat LSU the way they did, they're going to start getting other teams' best shots. I think
Mhm.
everyone's kind of respecting A&M now. And how does A&M respond to success? Are they a little bit too cocky, a little bit too confident? Because they haven't won anything yet. They're undefeated, but I've kind of been saying like I don't know if they're going to run the table in the SEC. I don't know if anyone is other than maybe Alabama. So I guess that's what I have to say. -6. I look for this to be inside of a touchdown in a game going into the fourth quarter. What say you?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you said. I think this could almost be a matchup pretty similar to Missouri and Vandy, not in the sense that it's just both of your teams are similar. You guys are, you know, I would say maybe Missouri leans on the ball and the run game a little bit more than you guys do, just because you guys have pretty deep weapons, like you just said. And especially now with Missouri having their backup quarterback, it always just makes it a little bit easier to just, run the ball, set up the pass that way. But what I am curious to see is how Missouri's pass defense, which is ranked seventh in the nation, does against those weapons that you've got, specifically at wide receiver. If Missouri's secondary, which by the way, I do agree with you, Missouri's defense is really good. Like they are pretty legit. Like that's a defense that could carry you to a championship as long as you've got a somewhat steady offense. Um, I think this will be a good test for to kind of see where is Marcel Reed really at in his quarterback journey in college. Just because there's been a slight chatter about it, I think he's really good. And of course, he's a true sophomore too, so he's still really young. But anyway, I think this will be an interesting game. I'm curious to see like how Missouri's true freshman quarterback comes in and plays against you guys, just because your defense is pretty good as well. Like that's the thing. Like your team is both pretty good at offense, pretty good at defense. So in other words, pretty good overall team, right? Missouri, before Pabula kind of got hurt, I would probably say like three quarters down the list in the passing, maybe somewhere right around that ballpark, but right near the top in the rushing game. So if you guys are able to make this game one dimensional, force the true freshman to pass, they could very well be in trouble. Missouri likes to run the ball, so do you guys. You guys are both right around the same ranking as far as time of possession goes, which I think will kind of go to your point, and I was thinking the same thing. I think this will be right inside a touchdown. I think it's going to be a slugfest. Um, I think it's going to be, I would not be surprised if it were under 20 points, to be honest with you. It may not be an exact replay of how Vandy and Missouri played out, but I mean, I think we may very well see a pretty close game to that in a sense. I would, excuse me, I'd probably give you guys the edge I would give you guys the edge even before Pupila got hurt. I would give you guys the edge because of like Marcel Reed over him and just the weapons you guys have on offense. Just a little bit deeper than Missouri's. How like would I take Missouri's defense over you guys's? Probably, but therefore you guys can are more well balanced overall on the team. So, but here's one thing I thought was very interesting. Okay, and I did not expect this until I saw this earlier. So Texas A&M ranks 131st in FBS and red zone defense, allowing opponents to score on 96.2% of their trips. Missouri's red zone offense ranks 55th in the nation, scoring on 87.2% of red zone opportunities. I don't know if you knew that or not, but very interesting stat. And like I said, I would not have expected that before I read. So anyway, we'll kind of see. And I think this is one of those games, and I was going to say this about the Iowa Oregon game, which we'll get to soon, but I feel like this could be a game where a field goal is a touchdown. So, anyway.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting game. Let's go ahead and get into that Oregon Iowa game. Number 6 Oregon versus unranked Iowa, which is a travesty. Iowa should be ranked. 2:30 on CBS. Oregon's favored by 5.5. So, fun fact: this is only the third time they've ever met, and Iowa holds a 2-0 edge on Oregon all time. So just a matchup you don't get to see very often. The last time they faced it was in 1995. We've been talking about this game. I'm really excited for this game for a lot of reasons. Both teams are off a bye here. This is a good shot to see really what both teams are made of. Oregon, it's been a while now since their loss to Indiana, but this is kind of their next chance in the spotlight again versus a good team on the road. So, and for Iowa, they've been blowing people out, but they haven't really faced a team like Oregon. So it's kind of a good litmus test for them. Now, the thing is, we're talking about slugfest. The over-under for this game is 41.5, which is for college, that is very low. And I think that's exactly what this is going to be. I mean,
Mhm.
Iowa's defense is one of the best defenses in the country. But
They
on the
rank
other
top
side of
10
the ball,
everywhere, man. Top
yeah,
10
the top 10
everywhere.
everywhere. On the other side of the ball, though, their quarterback, Gronowski, has less than 1,000 yards passing for the season. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is. Four
And
touchdowns, four interceptions.
yeah, and here's what I like about Iowa's defense is they've been tested by a pretty good offense in Indiana
Oh,
already,
yeah,
and they
for sure.
really pulled out that win against Indiana.
Yeah, they only lost by 5 points.
And no one's really been able to compete with Indiana like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think this is a very good test for Oregon's offense. Here's the deal, and this is kind of the matchup I'm going to be watching. Can Iowa move the ball at all versus Oregon's defense?
Hmm.
Solid defense. The thing is, like, even if they're not a top 5 defense in Oregon, they're still very good. And it's just about Iowa. Like, they've got to run the ball because they're one of the worst passing teams in the nation. So if by chance Oregon comes out with just a great opening game script and they are up 7-0, and then maybe it's a quick, 3-and-out, and Oregon scores again, I don't see Iowa being able to play from behind. But I definitely see this being like kind of a rock fight. Iowa trying to shorten the game and it being something like 20-17 or maybe even a lower scoring game. I think it's a matter, can Oregon find a way to just out Iowa and just sustain drives offensively? Because Iowa's going to be kind of capped on what they're going to be able to do offensively. But if they can just score enough points and keep Oregon at bay and have a shot in the fourth quarter, that's what they're going to need to do. I'm telling you right now, I don't know what to think about this game. I mean, I think it's fair to say Oregon, is favored for the right reasons, but Oregon's kind of got a sneaky, kind of tough last quarter of the season, and it starts with this. And I'm really excited to see the game. I'm really excited to see both teams on national television. So that's what I got.
Well, and I agree with what you said. Who would it? Who would benefit from the win more? Iowa. Who is probably more battle tested in the sense of just being in close games and finding a way to win them? I would also probably say Iowa.
Yep.
So that's, I mean, seriously, if I were Oregon, I would be a little nervous. And, I doubt they did. But, if they look past this game, I mean, they could be in really big trouble. Oregon's defense is really good as well. And, I think it'll boil down to Iowa's pass offense. Can Iowa just be able to pass the ball and maybe get to 150 yards just to allow them to have somewhat a run game? And like you said, I think this is probably going to be, I don't know, it may even be a 17-14 game. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, it would be very insane, though, if like this game were just like 31-45 or something. I mean, it would be kind of crazy if it went to that route just because I really don't know if Dante Moore has like faced a defense like quite like Iowa's, to be honest. And they're playing at Iowa too, which is a very passionate fan base. Much like the A&M stat I gave up, I found that I saw this earlier, and I was like, "Holy crap! I wouldn't have thought this either." Just because Oregon's defense, I know their offense is pretty spectacular. Like they have weapons and stuff like that. But I always just think of Dan Lanning and the defense first when I think of Oregon. So here's a cool little stat. So Oregon is 135th in FBS, which I want to say is last place in red zone defense, okay? Allowing opponents to score on 100% of their trips. Iowa's red zone offense ranks 10th in the nation, scoring on 94.1% of red zone opportunities. I think that will be very interesting. Just in what helps, like in the red zone, being able to run the ball pretty effectively. So, anyway, I'm very excited for this game. Upset alert, maybe.
Yeah, it would not shock me. And I'm excited just for the last kind of third of the season or quarter of the season, just in the Big Ten in general, because a lot of these teams and like the top layer are starting to face each other. Other than, of course, Indiana and Ohio State, who just don't face anybody this year. It's kind of crazy. Ohio State has Michigan at the end of the year, I guess, but we've been talking about it all year. It's looking more and more like the Big Ten has a better shot to get a fourth Big Ten team in there, and yeah, it's going to be kind of an interesting race to watch. But Iowa could really, get that spotlight, get the national spotlight. I think they face USC next, or maybe that's Oregon that faces USC next. But either way, some big games coming in the
Where
Big
would
Ten.
you where would you have where do you think they would have to put Iowa though if they came out and beat Oregon, being a top 10 team, pretty much going toe to toe with Indiana for all intents and purposes. Iowa has lost to Iowa State, which okay, yes, I know like there's maybe not much stock in Iowa State, but in-state rivalry, those are always crazy. So I wouldn't say it's a good loss. It was a close loss. And then obviously they lost to Indiana, which by the way is now ranked number 2 in the nation. So top
If they beat
15,
Oregon, I think you have. I would put them because I mean, look, I think they should be ranked now. I'd put them at 15.
yeah. I mean, I think you have to just compared to some of the other teams that are in the top 15. I think deservingly so. Now they may be some one of the most like one-dimensional offensively teams in there, but hey, it is what it is. They have a top-tier defense. Everybody else wish they could probably have, but there was something else I was going to say. One thing to point out here: the Oregon Indiana game is being played on CBS, and I want to say you guys are playing at the same time, which I bet that would probably be on
Yeah,
ESPN. So therefore, if we're not and still in this lockout
ABC.
situation, right? So if we're still in this lockout situation, In other words, you'd have to have two TVs or bring out your laptops, people, because you can't have the double screen or double games on like we had been previously. So hopefully they get that fixed. I actually haven't even looked at anything like about that up to see if that was going to be fixed or not. But
Yeah, I don't think they are going to have it fixed, but it just is what it is. There's nothing we can do. But
unfortunately,
I will be
unfortunately,
watching it. I'll be watching both. I'll probably just be watching those games on at 2:30. But let's go ahead and open it up to whatever other games you want to talk about. You know, big brands going at it this week, and this could have been like if some other teams had held up their end of the bargain, like a big week. Like just quickly, we have LSU, Alabama, Florida State, Clemson.
hmm.
And that could have been a big game. We have Penn State, Indiana. That could have been a big game. And in its place, we get BYU Tech, and that's cool to see. But let's just face it, it is cool to see, but it could have been a much bigger week this week. But we're not going to get it. It's just too bad. But the first game that I kind of wanted to go over, I think you have to talk about it. It'll be the most watched game at 6:30, and that is LSU Alabama. I don't know what to expect from LSU at this point. I mean, it's hard to imagine them being ready to play at Alabama. Both these teams, by the way, off buys. I was gonna say like, hey, well LSU's off a bye, so they've had more time to prep, but Alabama's off a bye too. So it's kind of hard to imagine LSU going in there and putting up much of a fight. To be honest, it's a rivalry game, so maybe they will. But yeah, I think it's gonna be one of those games you see on TV and you're like, oh, it's LSU Alabama, and then by the end of the first half, you're watching other games. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
So I do. I'm trying to think how I want to say this. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but my question with this game is how much pride does LSU have as far as football goes? Right? Brian Kelly being fired, first game without him. How awesome would that be for them to be able to beat Alabama? I mean, regardless, rank,
Yes,
whatever the
sir.
case. Yeah, it would be insane. But are they able to do that? I have no idea. But maybe this is like, them coming off the bye. I think that's key to kind of get them just refreshed, mentally ready to go. Um, and I don't know. I'll be curious to kind of see. Like, I think LSU can maybe make it close in the first half, but then by the end, but after halftime, Alabama probably pulls away. But I'll be curious just because kind of almost like we thought of Penn State going against Ohio State last week. How would Penn State show up? Would they have their pride and do their best? And it pretty much went how we expected. Maybe a close game at the beginning, and then second half Ohio State pulled away. But here's the deal: LSU's got players. If they just can put it all together, I mean, they could almost, I want to say, go beat anybody, but they just haven't yet. And I don't know. Can they do it this
I just think
weekend?
that's not their team this year.
Yeah.
They just
And
don't
it's
have
sad
it.
to say. Sad to say. I mean, seriously, because I briefly just looked at like some things for them. Their offense is just atrocious. I mean, it is atrocious. And I seriously, man, like at the beginning of the year, I was like, Nussmeier might be one of the best quarterbacks in college, going into this season. And I still, for the record, I still think he's a good quarterback just for whatever reason. I don't know what's going on. I don't, maybe he's to blame to some extent, of course, because he's out on the field, but also I think some of it is coaching. Now I don't know percentage wise how much is which, but anyway, I think it'll be could be an interesting game. I think another interesting game, unless you had something else to say.
No, that's all I got for that
Okay.
game. Go ahead.
Is maybe the Auburn Vanderbilt game, which could maybe be under the radar a little bit. My question is, with Hugh Freeze being fired first week without him, how does Auburn show up against Vandy? It's kind of crazy because it's like every week we've got two like big time programs without their coach. like, like
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it was crazy because I was like, damn, I just said that about Brian Kelly, but uh, anyway, kind of crazy, but seriously, Auburn's defense is for real. I know their offense, or yeah, their defense is like legitimate. Their offense is meh, you know. But Auburn, can they just stop the Vandy run game and just do enough to kind of just not let Diego Pavia pass it all over them? I think that could be a potential. And can their offense do just enough? And same question to them: how much pride does the program have? Just because they have plenty of talent to go and do things, they've just got to put it together. So I think that could be potentially an interesting game. I don't know if you have any thoughts or questions on that. So
Auburn, I don't know what it means to them, but they could still make a bowl.
yeah, for
They could
sure.
still go 7-5. I don't know that they will, but they could at least go 6-6. They're gonna have to win two more games to do so. But the thing is, this is kind of an interesting situation where Auburn's defense is going to make any offense kind of look bad, and Vandy, it's kind of another bad
Emotional
matchup.
loss for Vandy last week too.
Right, right. So the thing is, Auburn can just do nothing offensively. They can do
Hmm.
nothing. So maybe it won't matter, but I could see this being another like really low scoring game,
Yeah, exactly.
like a messy game.
Yeah, exactly. Um, just because, like I said, Auburn's defense is legitimate, and I know Pavia had like a good amount of passing yards on us last week. A lot of them, he just had no choice but to pass. And credit to him, like we said in the reaction, like credit to him for making those plays, bringing his team back almost single handedly. But I don't think he'd be able to do that against Auburn's defense. Okay, so I don't know. And if Auburn is able to come out and win out the rest of the year, including the Auburn game, I mean, number one, that would be insane. But hey, that would be like a statement season. And I was thinking about this earlier, man. Auburn, which we talked about in the reaction show, I think Auburn's a good job. Between that and Florida, I would probably choose a Florida job just because, like you said, or like I said, you can just, or like we both have said, pretty much all the talent's right around there. Um, Auburn or in Alabama, I mean, I probably wouldn't say it's as saturated as Florida, but still good opportunity. They just need to go actually hire a decent coach. Okay. So Gus Malzahn, I'll give them a pass on that because he at least won a championship. Or almost, excuse me, almost won a championship. Well, hold on. Was Gus Malzahn there with Cam Newton? Can't remember.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But I think he took them to a championship. I know they lost or no? I don't know why. I'm having like a mental breakdown. Anyway, Gus Malzahn, I'll give them a pass on that because I think they were decent a couple years. Okay. After that, Brian Harson. Okay. Dog water. Hugh Freeze. I see why they thought at the time it may have been a good hire just because what he was able to do at Ole Miss, and won't get into the rules he broke or whatever recruiting, but anyway, it turned out to be dog water. Okay, they need to actually go get, and advocating for James Franklin here again, I guess, but they need to go get a proven guy that can basically build up the program the way it needs to be built up from the ground up and turn them into a contender. I think another interesting, we need to get back onto the games, but while we're on kind of this topic that I'll lead this off into, Miami, Mario Cristobal, uh, what's his situation with this upcoming week? People are starting to really kind of look at him and think, can he really do that with Miami? And I think that's even I think in the preview game or the reaction video, we were discussing how Hugh Freeze, just with all the talent he has, and just really not doing all that much with it. I think it's even more so with Mario Cristobal at Miami, just because literally recruiting class after recruiting class, getting all these big time quarterbacks and really not being able to do anything with it. And I saw an episode with Josh Pate where he was discussing Miami as having players that are creatures all over the field. So it's basically another school or another coach that has all the talent in the world, but just doing too little with too much, in a sense. So
Right, and it's not like he's losing to just like a kind of like
yeah,
a James Franklin situation. He's
yeah,
losing to like top five teams. He's losing to like teams he shouldn't be
no,
losing
yeah,
to.
exactly. Yeah, that's the one thing you can say about James Franklin is, he's losing to really good competition, not to lesser,
Until he
for the most
didn't, and
part.
that's what got him fired.
Yeah, exactly. For the most part, yeah.
So that was Gus Malzahn you're asking about, right?
Yes, because I forget what
He
years he was
was the offensive coordinator 2010 when they won
there.
the
Okay,
yeah.
okay, and I think
Uh,
like 2013, well, I'm trying to think because there was another year. Remember that play that Nick Marshall threw in Alabama player or Georgia
yeah,
somebody
I
like
thought that
tipped.
was 2010.
It
I
was
don't know. I forget.
they had another really good season. I can't remember. I could have sworn. Oh no, that's what it was, man. He took them to the championship. They played Florida State, and Jameis Winston beat them. That's what it was, but it was very close. So Gus Malzahn almost won a championship with Auburn. I want to say maybe
That was the kick
2013,
six year. That was in 2013.
2013. But Gus Malzahn was a coach by then, I think, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
yeah. He was the head coach. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I give
Well,
Auburn a pass for Gus Malzahn.
quick aside, but just by the way, I had mentioned that Iowa's unranked, and they are, but I forgot being that this is the first week of the playoff committee rankings, they're going to be using those rankings, not the AP rankings. So Iowa still could be ranked. Not that it really matters. It's going to be on CBS at 2:30. But I just like to see like the number 25 next to Iowa when they actually play. Just a quick aside. Maybe we won't have to worry about that. But as far as other games go, there aren't a ton of big games on the slate. I am interested just because this team likes to play with fire every week, and that is Georgia at Mississippi State.
Hmm.
Mississippi State competes with every team they play. Georgia's a 7.5 point favorite. Is Georgia at all thinking about Texas the next week? They don't seem like that type of team, but it is on the road. And it would not shock me if this is a close game. In fact, at this point, it may shock me if it's not a close game because that's just not what Georgia does. So, in Mississippi State, they're trying to get those signature wins. They finally got their first SEC win last week. I think this could be a sneaky game, like just this random kind of upset that the general public is like, "What? Georgia lost to Mississippi State?" Now you should be really rooting for Georgia in this game
Oh yeah,
because you don't want to go against a pissed off Georgia,
yeah.
but this is going to be interesting. Mississippi State now, they could be saying, look, we lost to two against Florida, had a very good shot to win it, should have beat Texas, and they just beat Arkansas. They could be on like a 3 game win streak, but they're not. So they're competing with these teams.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think all it will take for somebody to beat Georgia is just get on top of them quickly and just do enough to bless you. Have just do enough to stop Georgia's offense because really the only player I can think of off the top of my head that's like, okay, that guy's a game changer for sure is Zakarian Branch. Um, if you're able to kind of cover him up and they have him do pretty much everything on the offense, like, just do like quick little tosses out of the backfield, quick little passes. I mean, everything. And he exploded last game too. But man, Jeff Lebby's offense is pretty tricky. It's really good. I mean, I know it pretty well or I don't know it, but I experienced it 2 weeks ago, and man, it almost gave me a heart attack for sure. Um, but yeah, it could be a sneaky good game. However, I will say I don't think Kirby Smart is looking past this. Now, could they? I don't know. I guess there's always a chance, but I don't think so. I think another sneaky, interesting game. Like I think there'd be a little bit more chatter about this if they didn't lose last week to North Texas, but the Navy Notre Dame game. I think that
Mhm.
maybe could be an interesting game. Um, I don't know. Is the Navy football team pissed off? Are they going to be able to kind of make this a game against Notre Dame? I don't know. I know we're both very high on Notre Dame, but I don't know. Navy, Army, Air Force, all those teams kind of have like between all four of them. There's always like one crazy win between them. I think once a year. I don't know. And could this be it? Maybe.
I'll be honest. I will be shocked if this is a game. I think Navy is just not very good. Notre Dame favored by 26 and a half. That's what teams are favored against, like versus some FCS opponents.
Yeah,
I
I
just think,
actually would not have guessed that. To be honest with you.
yeah, I mean, Navy just they're 7-1, but they hadn't faced anybody. And then when they faced North Texas last week, they pretty much got shut down. So Yeah, I mean, it would be very interesting if this was a close game. But you got to remember, Notre Dame every week is in like must win mode, and they got to win
Hmm.
convincingly. So by the way, I want to correct myself. We will not be getting to the playoff rankings today because they are talking about they're doing their meetings today, but it's not going to be released till tomorrow, and that's going to be at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So that's just something to keep in mind. There's only one more game on the schedule that I think I just have to mention just because it's two big brands and both these coaches are kind of on the hot seat, and it's just like a disaster of just schools right now, and it's Florida State and Clemson. I don't even. I feel sad because I don't even want to watch it. Like it's on the ACC network. It's not on any like major television broadcast. Clemson favored 2.5. Like I don't know. Both these teams could have new coaches next year. Probably not Clemson. Actually, probably not either of them. I think they decided to stick with Mike Norvell. But again,
Could be
what could have
controversial
been
for
here?
some.
Yeah, well, what could have been? And I like
Yeah.
I don't know what to expect from this game. Like Clemson favorite 2.5. Literally no idea who the better
Hmm.
team is here. But could
Exactly.
you imagine losing this game, being on the losing end of the stick here? It's just like, geez, like what a disappointment.
Oh, for sure. I think, I mean, just because Florida State has one more win, one less loss than Clemson does, like if they lose, it wouldn't be as bad as Clemson being 3-6, which I thought
I don't
was going to.
understand how Clemson is this bad.
Yeah, I
Like,
know.
okay, you lost to LSU, or
Look
you're
at how much
losing
draft
versus
talent
like
they have,
good.
man.
Oh yeah, well it's like if you're gonna lose versus like good Power Four schools, and you're gonna go like 8-4, like it's a bad season for you. But that's not what's happening. Like they're losing to Syracuse. SMU is a good team. Duke's a good team, but those are teams you got to beat. Like you're only
Especially
beating
with
Boston.
Clemson's talent that they have. I mean, I was talking about Garrett Nussmeier being one of the best quarterbacks like coming into the season. I thought Cade Klubnik would have like been neck and neck with Nussmeier. Okay, in Clemson's defense, they've got like drafted or NFL draft talented players all over the field. And I forgot the guy. I want to say Brian Westmore or something like that. On the offense, he's going to be a drafted wide receiver one day too. So that's an insane thing. Like I think regardless of this record, I think Dabo Sweeney is one of the better coaches. His just inability to adapt to the times and the transfer portal has really damaged him at this point in time. But as far as culture and talent goes, I still think Clemson is top tier. It's just will Dabo agree? And maybe that's what the athletic director will kind of force him to do is just, hey man, dip into the portal a little bit more, do what you need to in there, and you can stay on or whatever. I don't know.
Maybe this season will be so bad for both teams, but especially Clemson, where no one will have to step in. And maybe Dabo will say, okay, you know what? Like, this is so bad. I have to make major changes. Because you got to
Yeah.
think, like, he can't do this another year. Like, this is
Oh
kind
yeah,
of his year. Okay, clearly this is a bad year. You got to, like, be back
man. It's
next year.
either this year or the next, and
Right.
depending on how that the next maybe 4 games go, the first 4 games of the next season, if he stays, depending on how that goes, that could be a mid-season fire right there too. So maybe
Yep.
he'll have a little bit more of a leash, I guess, just because he'll have a brand new quarterback, and I don't know Clemson's quarterback situation off the back or off the top of my head. So I don't know, like I don't know if they've got a good one behind Cade Klubnik or if they I don't know Portal or something like that. But anyway, Debo is on a short leash, and I feel really bad about that because I really like the guy. I really do. Just skimming off the top here, though, I think another game that could be interesting, and this is kind of more your thing, not necessarily mine, but Tulane
Tulane,
here.
Memphis. Yep. Yeah. I'm looking
Uh,
forward to that one.
yeah, do you have anything to say about it, or
Not really, other than, it is like Friday night game, doesn't have any competition other than, Northwestern USC playing at the same time, which, I just will say, I'm not impressed by USC's victory last week. They tend to play better at home, and they're about to be facing a team that's doing a cross country trip. Northwestern has been very competitive versus a lot of teams they've played. I'm just saying, watch out. But as far as the game you're talking about, I think Memphis is probably a little bit better than Tulane. But by the way, Tulane's coach, what is it, John Summerall? He
People are
is
talking about
kind of,
him.
yeah, expected to be one of these high profile coaches in the mix for all of these jobs. You know, the Auburn job, LSU, they're talking about him for LSU, Florida, and then Penn State. So, you
And
know,
maybe that makes sense because, there has been chatter about people saying like they want to get somebody that fits into the culture down there. I mean, and Tulane's like right there, right? So what he's been able to do there at Tulane, he can just do
they've been
that
good.
and more at LSU.
Hmm.
Um, I was thinking about this the other day. Texas, we went out and hired Tom Herman after having two really good years at Houston. No discredit to him. That was pretty awesome, to be honest. But sometimes, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is. It's not just Tom Herman, but all these other coaches that sometimes have like a year or two of magic, like at these smaller schools, and then they get hired and they go to these bigger schools. It just does not pan out. So I would like say error, like caution with a little bit of that. But however, in that instance, maybe it works out just because I think LSU, very much like Texas, it takes a special type of person to be able to be in that program, I think. And that was just, I mean, kind of whenever Brian Kelly got fired, we were like, yeah, he didn't really fit in there. People didn't like him all that much. And just that cringy first interview, or not interview, but thingy in the pep rally or whatever, that just never got out of my head. And I don't know. So
Yeah. Yeah,
anyway.
as far as the game itself, I will be, watching it just because it is kind of my thing. Because look, these are kind of playoff games to decide this 12th team, and they both have one loss in the conference. Weirdly enough, Memphis, their one loss on the season is to UAB, who's 3-5 on the year. It's just like a random loss.
Mhm.
But at this point, they beat South Florida, and this is their next test in Tulane. So yeah, I'll be watching it, and yeah, that's kind of all I got personally as far as the games. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Not necessarily. Maybe just a little tad point on the Northwestern USC game. Northwestern has been pretty competitive and putting together a pretty good season compared to what it has been lately. Their defense is pretty, I don't know, pretty all around good. I know USC's offense is really good, like top tier. So we'll kind of see how that Northwestern defense is able to control the USC offense, because Northwestern is kind of a team, like a couple others we talked about earlier. They like to run the ball and not really have to come from behind. They're 118th in passing yards per game, 172. Probably the only other school that they're ahead of is Iowa in that regard. Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, I think it could be interesting. USC playing at home, and that was a hard fought win for them too against Nebraska last week. And kind of curious to see where USC's head is going into this game. But other
Agreed.
than
Well,
that,
let me ask you this before we sign off. Of the games this week that are more than like a 2.5 point spread, which team is the most likely to get the upset this week?
uh,
I'll give you mine while you're looking it over because I've been kind of thinking about it. I actually think it's the Auburn Vanderbilt game. I think 6.5 point spread. I
mhm.
could see the Vanderbilt Magic kind of just being over with, and Auburn just doing enough to pulling that one out. That would be my upset to watch.
Yeah. Mm. I was thinking that game, or really and truly, man, seriously, there's an argument to be made for Missouri to potentially have an upset. I don't, like I said, I still favor A&M, but there's an argument to be made that Missouri could potentially upset you guys, right? Same thing for BYU and Tech. and also, like you said, Vandy and Auburn. But I guess you could say, like, however, I really actually think I'll just go all in on the Iowa bandwagon for this week. I'll just go out and say it.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair. All right.
But I
Okay.
think this week there's not like high profile matches like we said throughout the episode, but there's definitely some interesting ones in my opinion. Just
Mm.
because we're kind of starting to get down to the wire and you kind of know who teams are at this point, and I don't know. There's just a lot of potential, and college football will be college football, and there'll be an unexpected upset somewhere. So anyway,
Agreed. Well, I think that's a good way to end it. And yeah, let's sign off. I'll see you next week.
all right. See you next week.